Smart 24, Driving Business.
Hello, a very good evening and a very warm welcome to the show. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is Smart 24 TV and we drive your business. My name is Anthony Sebale and I am your host. And of course, this is the point where we get to discuss different policies and analyze the fact of how those policies are linked to economic growth and the different parts of our economy and how they do influence them. Remember to follow us on Twitter, that's at Smart24TV, and give us feedback along the way. You can also watch us live on YouTube, that is at Smart24TV Live, and give us some comments and feedback in the comment section. We'll be very, very glad to have that kind of feedback from you. Now, today we are discussing climate resilience and how it is linked to economic growth. Now, when we talk about climate resilience, we are talking about the ability to anticipate, prepare for, and respond to hazardous events, trends, or disturbances that are related to climate. Now, today, the global climate has changed drastically with several climatic disasters happening all over the world. The recent one being Brazil flooding and the Turkey earthquake. Now, these could be seemingly far from us, but the effects of climate change are being felt even here in Uganda. Just in January, the heat we felt was quite unprecedented, and a couple of other things like floods in several parts of the country have continued as well to being unraveled. And this is, of course, what is currently worrying some activists and civil society organizations that are in line with maintaining stability under climate. Now, today, to discuss this topic, I'm with Dr. Henry, who is the Executive Director of the Water Governance Institute. And the Water Governance Institute is one of the evidence-based, non-for-profit, non-political, non-government organizations was established way back in 2008 to give us a little bit more of checks and balances in the policies and also ensure transparency. Dr. Henry, you're very, very welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I can see you've done your homework. Yes. Yes, and I'm glad to be here once again and to be able to talk about climate resilience and its relationship with our economic growth. But just talk a little bit about Water Governance Institute, just like you said. We're a research, training, and advocacy organization, and we do charity work. And currently, we, like you said, founded in 2008, so about 14, 15 years old in the work. But we have done lots of work in the oil, gas, and mining sector. We have done work in forestry, we've done work on agriculture, currently we're the national focal point on what is called the water tracker, tracking the water that you use in your houses, in the industry, in forestry. So we are preparing our first report, country report, on tracking the water that we use. You know, we take water for granted and we tend to waste it. And before you know it, when the rain season, like now where we are, it's raining beautifully, and I love the temperature from the other crazy temperature we're in. But I do not see any infrastructure that has been put in place both by government and individuals to actually capture the rain so that you can store it for the next dry season. And so that is something we shall be talking about as we go deeper into the discussion.
Yeah, well, Dr. Henry, you have quite a number of years of experience working with this organization and this institution, and you call it a charity organization, which is quite interesting. What makes you so passionate about the matters that you actually handle at Water Governance Institute.
Water Governance Institute was founded on the following basis. We discovered that many of the organizations that were working in the country said they were working on water, but when you went deeper, you discover that they were actually working on sanitation issues. And they were not working so much on the other aspects of water. The other thing is that sometime in 2007, I attended a meeting in Tunisia, that was organized by the 5 international banks, the World Bank Group, Japanese Investment Bank, Asian Investment Bank, European Investment Bank, and plus, of course, IFC, the African Development Bank. And I had the privilege of attending one of their board meetings. And in that board meeting, there was a discussion that was brought about commoditizing water, making water tradable like a commodity. Yes, we are already trading in water, bottling it up and selling it. It has become a tradable commodity. We are selling water in pipes, and your people are paying a tariff to access water. But we have not yet made this product tradable as the water itself on the stock exchange.
Yes.
And therefore, we don't have anybody who owns the water bodies. And so for me, it scared me. When you commoditize water, that means somebody is going to privatize Lake Victoria. Somebody is going to own Lake Victoria. Somebody is going to own Lake Kyoga. The company is going to own Lake Albert, okay, or Lake George. And therefore, they will be able to sell that resource just the way we are selling oil. Because oil is a commodity also. It's a tradable commodity. It's traded on the stock exchange. We shall be building pipelines to take water to the market. So that scared me, because my question that came up was, who is going to pay for the water that is used by wild animals? Who is going to pay for the water that is used by the forest? Who is going to pay for the water that is used by the poor people in this country, or old people who cannot afford to pay the water or to buy the water? Who is going to pay for that? What frameworks shall we put in place to make sure that even if you were to make water a tradable commodity, it will still be accessible the way it is being accessed today? Who is going to take control of the water that comes from the sky? Who is going to own it? Are we going to have situations where that for as long as it is still rain, then it is everybody's resource? Yes. But once it touches the ground, then it becomes somebody's resource. So those are the questions that crossed my mind. So I came back and said, no, let me deal with the other water elements that are not touched by the other entities who are working in the water sector, and contribute to the Ministry of Water and Environment to see how we can develop strategies and policies to make sure that we have a framework for governing our water that is going to ensure that we protect it, yes, from excessive utilization, from control, from capture, and make sure that what God provided to us, we use it the way it has been used, without having the greed of money coming in to take control of the water resource. So on those grounds, we started, that's why we founded Water Governance Institute. I was joined by a lady and another gentleman who then we founded the organization. We've grown now. We have a board of about 7 people and other members who associate themselves with the institution. So that's how we began. And interestingly, in 2008, we thought we were going to start with, yes, we started with a water project, which we were running together with the Uganda National Council of Science and Technology and what is called the Non-Aligned Movement, Science and Technology Center, which was based in India, New Delhi. That was our first project that we thought that was taking us into that direction. And we became the focal point for what was called groundwater recharge. And that was mainly rainwater harvesting and groundwater recharge. We were trying to look at the potential of going back to rainwater harvesting as a way of capturing water, because since the 1970s, we used to have, it was a policy for building a house and you'd have a rainwater harvesting system. somehow it was taken away. But for us, we think we need to go back.
Yes,
We need to go
reverse,
back
yes,
to that policy and make it a requirement that every
Yeah.
house that is structured or is built must have a rainwater harvesting system, and it should be on the basis of the people who are going to stay or use that structure. All hotels, if possible, they need to have their own rainwater harvesting system. First of all, to save on costs. Secondly, to be able to have water that is readily available to run, at least to run ablutions, toilets, and washing some of those materials that they use.
Wow, very interesting. Very interesting. We're going to come back to that conversation because it's very vital. We cannot talk about climate, we cannot talk about economics without talking about water. And when you look at currently, wetlands cover at least over 4,500 square kilometers here in Uganda, 1.9% of Uganda's total land. And that number is going down, rather that those figures are coming down because of what we are seeing,
It was actually
the activity. Yes.
It was 13% before.
Yeah. And now it's down to
9.
Yes.
And about 10, 20 years ago, we had a forest estate of about 24.
Yeah.
We're now down to almost 9%.
From 24%.
From 24% and 1992. Okay.
Okay.
So you can see the level of degradation. But let's continue.
Yeah. Thank you. We're going to get back to that. But today the big question is climate resilience. How prepared is the world, starting from the global perspective? We've seen so many transitions in leadership, especially now when we look at the powerful countries here in the world, the United States, Russia. And one of the things that the voters look out for is the response of the candidates to climate change. Just take an example of Donald Trump. I'm pretty sure Donald Trump's approach to climate change contributed to the last US election results, somewhat, partly or wholly. But when you look at the fact that now people are so concerned that to the extent that the world leaders have to come to power with a plan to tackle climate change, how significant or how grave are the impacts of climate change on the global system, and especially in the economic system when you look at the economic growth of the global countries?
I think for me, it is still a cosmetic conversation. We have not yet become very serious about addressing climate change. Why am I saying that? We have now run there were 27 conference of parties. Those are international meetings that are happening where member states and their representatives come to discuss climate change. There were standards set in 2015 by the International Climate Change, IPCC, a panel for climate change, and the International Framework for Climate Change. But those frameworks or standards, we have not seen much traction. Yes, there are people who are trying to do their own things at country level, but at a global level, really, I don't see much. It is all politics yet, and nothing serious has come because what is causing climate change? Who are the main culprits for climate change? If you look at climate change, the greatest contributors to climate change are those who are emitting a lot of emissions, carbon dioxide emissions, methane emissions, and oxide emissions. So most of those are the ones who are responsible for the climate change. And these are the big polluters: China, US, India, Europe, Britain, right?
Yes.
And Africa, which seems to be suffering more on the effects of climate change, is contributing less than 2% of that global emission. And so if the principle of polluter pays principle were to apply to address climate change, these big polluters should be the ones bearing the cost of mitigating climate change. But they are not willing to pay or put up the money. They still want to put up the money for climate financing in a framework where they will still make a profit. They don't want to pay for the damage that they have caused. And for me, if that be the case, I would rather say that each country pays for its pollution according to the levels of pollution. Each continent pays for pollution to the level of pollution they cause, and that money then contributes to a basket fund for offering grants. And I want to say grants, not equity, not loan, according to the current climate financing framework, where actually you have loans and equity constituting the bigger proportion of climate finance, and grants constitute a very, very small proportion. It then goes out from the principle of polluter pays principle. And yeah, so I would like to see that situation, that more money is put into grants than equity and loan, because honestly, somebody must take responsibility for the pollution they make. And the other thing, of course, is the interventions. I'm a bit apprehensive, okay, really sorry for the developing countries, because we tend to sit and wait for the developed world to think for us. We are not defining our narrative. We are waiting for the Muzungu to define our narrative. We are not defining our narrative as Africans. We're not defining our narrative as the LDC countries. We are waiting for, it's as if they are smarter than we are, which is not the case. I believe that there are smart brains on the African continent that can actually rethink or think the course of that we need to take globally and even economically in terms of designing our economic growth paradigms. Why should we be following always guidance from the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank? And there are smart brains in Uganda who can shape up the policy direction for Uganda. And there are smart brains in the African continent to direct Africa the way we should go. Should we always follow International Monetary Fund? No. Yeah? Because there are countries I know in this world which don't follow the IMF guidance. They may make reference to them, but they are not influenced so much by the policy that comes from the IMF.
Thank you.
For example, Asia, China, and the others. And they are far, far away from where we are. One of the countries that always amazes me is, I think it is Indonesia, where in 1972, Uganda was far, far richer than it was. But today, Indonesia is far richer than we are. Why? Because they followed homegrown policies to direct their development path. So I'm saying that we need to stop, rewind, and become again in a different rhythm that is based on homegrown policies.
Well, Dr. Henry, we're going to take a very short break. But as per the Uganda Climate Change Act 2021, the finance minister is empowered to seek, in consultation, of course, with the water and environment counterparts, to seek climate financing generally. However, recently, in one of the East African community engagements on climate change financing, one of the representatives there, the Principal of Environment and Natural Resources of FISA, the East African community, commented that the region East Africa receives at least $2.5 billion from international public finance resources. And this is far below the $21.18 billion that is required to implement if all the partner states were actually to develop. How can we be able to get to finance these climate change policies? How can we be able to support ourselves? Because even our budgets are still struggling. 50% of our budgets are coming from foreign borrowing. How are we going to do it? Are we going to increase the tax burden or something? After the break, Dr. Henry, when we return. Thank you so much.
I was going for it right away.
Yes. Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen, for tuning in. Remember to follow us on Twitter and on YouTube. We are live right now at Smart 24 TV. We return shortly. Stay with us.